how do we design this in a way that doesn't feel, one, like I've just imported it from any other business, any other team, and two, doesn't feel cursory or tick a box. Enter the Forever Projects jobs board that we created. That was my solution to the high bar of intelligence at the AirTree team.
All right, so stoked to be joined by Harriet Dwyer, the amazing Harriet from AirTree Venture Capital. Great to have you, Harriet.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to be chatting.
Yeah, we'll just continue our conversation. So for anyone who doesn't have the pleasure of knowing you, tell us a bit about your current role at AirTree VC.
Yeah, so my role at AirTree is Head of Impact. AirTree is a venture capital fund that was really one of the first in Australia and takes a role not just in funding startups, but really shaping the ecosystem. And Head of Impact is one of the newer roles. I've been here for just over a year, and I think that kind of shines through in my work, or in AirTree's intention for my work, which was really to kind of be more structural, I guess, and sophisticated in how they think through the impact of their decisions across our operations, our investments, and our philanthropy. So I'm responsible for setting up the systems and the measurement and the structures for the team to be able to amplify their impact through their actions and their decisions.
Love it. And it's like, as you said, it's like the intention of the organization says a lot in the shaping and creating of the role in the first place. So it's pretty exciting. So for some context for people who don't know about you, or maybe the philanthropic kind of space and where you came from, maybe a bit of background around that, like where you came from before AirTree.
Yeah, so I started really, I've done a wide variety of strange things that don't really, if you pattern match, get you to where I am. But I kind of started professionally in philanthropy, so working with families and high net worth individuals to think about the strategy behind their giving. I think often we think about giving as more emotive than strategic, and in fact, the best givers in the world are like quite structured and quite intentional. And that's from thinking about what change you want to see in the world, how change occurs, measuring that change, and then repeat action around giving and supporting causes. And so I worked in more of that not-for-profit space, but quickly grew a passion for more sustainable change journeys. And that kind of leads you to the intersection of social change or environmental change and business. So I then worked I was part of the founding team of a disability tech company, which was a delightful journey of hyper growth, incredible exposure to some of the fun parts of the Australian startup ecosystem, but in a really deeply passionate context. It was founded by a brother and sister who had a younger brother with disability, and so they had real strong lived experience and a very strong understanding of the social change that needed to happen around human rights for people with disability. And that context plus business principles in it, like, just really opened up my eyes. So I kind of have a very strong personal attachment to using business principles to create social and environmental change. And the role at AirTree that I'm in now is an extension of that. It's just kind of at that broader portfolio level than just being in the business.
I love that. And it's the idea of kind of you kind of tasting and seeing what's possible with that intersection of that lived experience to a real social problem, the way that business can kind of really help solve that problem much, much faster, but then the integration of tech to allow the customers and users of that service to have a much better experience, and just kind of the intersection of all those three. Can totally see why you're at AirTree now in that role.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky, and like technology was right for that problem and that product in that market. Like it's not every social problem, but I do believe very strongly that if we're going to solve some of the biggest issues in our society and in our world and in our communities, that people with lived experience of the problems are the best place to try and solve them, because they understand the nuances and they have the passion and the energy and the commitment that really you need on a founding journey.
Yeah, and a way of potentially also for people who don't have that lived experience, having an understanding of it through their story, as a way to kind of fast track that empathy for the problem. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. So AirTree's in an exciting development, just signed up to the 1% pledge movement, which is super exciting. So maybe just can you outline a little bit how that looks, and maybe just explain what the 1% pledge movement is for anyone who's not aware of that, and maybe also then what was AirTree's motivation to join that movement?
Yeah, sure. AirTree has been quite philanthropically minded since it was founded. The founders, the current partners are all very authentically passionate about the shape of the world and their role in impacting that. Especially as, you know, the people that like seed new innovations, they're very, very aware of what are the long tail, like what's the concentric circles of impact when you're, you know, you have that kind of privilege to be in a role like that. And so they've always thought through, they've done a lot of community initiatives and a lot of philanthropy in the past, but I guess like any growing business startup, they want to get more and more sophisticated as they go on. And the role that I have is to do that in the impact space for them. And that looks like the systems and the structures to really kind of coordinate and amplify those intentions. And Pledge 1% was just a really great way for us to do that in the specific problem space of strategic giving or philanthropy, whatever you want to call it. And the pledge was a great choice because it is really well established. It's really widely used. One of the biggest issues I think in the social change space is that people feel the need to like constantly come up with new ideas and new ways versus kind of pulling in the same direction. And Pledge 1%, which is a movement, they call themselves, for organizations to sign up to giving 1% of, you can kind of do any combination, but 1% of time and money and resources and basically what's available to you as a business back to charity. And so it's a really nice structural form for AirTree to kind of take what was really disparate and quite ad hoc based on what was inbound and kind of put a little bit more intention in being more outbound focused of, well, what change do we want to see in the world? How do we want to materialize that? And the pledge is a structure of that. And now we get to kind of color it in and think about what that 1% should be used for.
Yeah. And a number of times in the chat already, you've talked about systems change, and I know you and I have kind of nerded out on this in other discussions, but it reminds me of that quote in that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And it's one thing to aspire to be philanthropic or generous, but to actually have a system in place shows more than anything. Again, I feel like this today, I'm going to do this, versus there's a system that shows that I'm going to do it even if I don't feel like it, which is the highest form of kind of giving intent, I guess, is actually like putting that in place. So
I think that's right. I think you, particularly on giving, but I think any problem that's worth solving, you have to start with passion. And I think that that's the 0 to 1, right? That's the energy, that's the excitement, that's the discovery, it's the curiosity, which is incredibly important on a giving journey. But then the 1 to 10 is like, what's the structure that's going to make me able to do this in a more considered way? And I think particularly in social change, even with a lot of passion, you can want to see a lot of change. And if you try and change everything, you kind of end up changing nothing. And so it's kind of contrary to the intention of why you start, but you want to be incredibly specific and focused and structured. And that's how you create the change that you're hoping to see in the world. And so I agree, structures and system is important, but as a sort of a secondary step to the passion that drives your initial interest.
Yeah, definitely. And you think with something like this, you're talking about the passion 0 to 1, like you think that something like this would be relatively straightforward. You've got, all right, 1% of our time, we've got some amazing humans at AirTree, 1% of profit, let's just go. But it's actually not as straightforward as that. And I know the architecting of that's something you've been really working on with great intent. Do you want to just maybe talk a little bit about how that's been as you've brought that design to life, what early obstacles you've found as you've designed it, and then maybe particularly on that 1% of time aspect, which again isn't as straightforward as you might think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. One of the things that wasn't a barrier was AirTree's intent, and particularly the partner's interest in doing that. So that was really lovely, and I think, again, a great example of the culture here at AirTree, have an intention and then just very authentically want to get behind it. But the other part of the culture is with high curiosity, high intelligence, and kind of a high bar for bullshit is sort of part of the culture. And that's a delight, but it means that you have to get innovative with it. And I think compounded on that is giving anyway in a new age with a newer generation of people can seem a little outdated. It can sort of seem something that's for generations gone by, where it's traditionally, I do my work and make my money here, and then I give away a portion of that over here. whereas younger generations are seeing it way more interlinked with, well, maybe I just won't hurt anyone in the first place, or maybe I'll try and make a positive change in the first place, but while doing my operations. And I think in that there's a bit of generalized sort of mistrust of traditional structures. And so Pledge 1% was important for us because, as I said, it's a repeatable, it's a proven, it's a known concept. But within that structure, I wanted to get people's attention. I wanted to 1% of time for the AirTree team, that's 3 days a week of extra leave for everyone on the team. I didn't want that to sit passive. And that traditionally does happen with these kinds of programs because people are uninspired, they sort of forget that it's there, they don't know how to activate it because they want to activate it in a way that piques their interest, their curiosity, their intelligence. They want to properly be meaningful, and it's often a high bar to get to that meaningful amount. So that was the complexity for me, and that's what it sort of took the time of how do we design this in a way that doesn't feel one, like I've just imported it from any other business, any other team, and two, doesn't feel cursory or tick a box. Enter the Forever Projects jobs board that we created. That was my solution to the high bar of intelligence at the AirTree team.
Yeah, and that's the interesting, segue into the, that's all kind of going and percolating around in the background at AirTree and with your role. And then, I end up meeting you in February, I think it was this year, with Craig at the AirTree office presenting about Forever Projects. And so it was just great timing that was kind of where you were at. And then we've come along and gone, all right, we found our way here. Let's just tell the story, share the philosophy. So what is it, as kind of I was sharing about our journey and philosophy and whatever, what was it that kind of made you feel that the Forever Projects journey and movement and values would be a good alignment and partnership for this as AirTree started?
It was two main things really, when I think back on it. One was you as a founder. We work with founders. We're designed to pick out great founders, and you clearly fit that mold. You have a very, very, very interesting and unique way of talking about the function of a charity, particularly in international development space. As an Australian charity, it's the way that you pitch that, the way that you mirrored concepts in investment really resonated. And that was as a result of your abilities as a founder. And that really, that struck us as something that kind of fits with our mold. And then the second part was the fact that you use social enterprise or kind of business concepts to support women, or for women to support themselves, to lift themselves out of poverty. That really resonated with what I believe is the way to create change in the world. What I was saying earlier about the need for business principles, sustainable practices to be there to support longevity of change. And so the fact that you were helping women through entrepreneurship and that you were a great founder really just kind of is reflective of what we do in our everyday business. And so it was really clear that there was a really nice alignment.
Yeah, and it's interesting that hearing that back now, because when you think about, I know that AirTree's portfolio has grown to 100 now, and it's starting, each of those companies starts with a founder, and then they, with their vision to solve the problem, will grow the team. And the fact that in the Forever Projects journey that we're funding 6 different partners in Tanzania, each with their understanding of that culture and that context and what the women are facing in there and how they create each of them, and the group of businesses within that, that particular context for those women to use those businesses to fight poverty as a hand up, not a handout. That felt really aligned to me as well. So it's a great way to think about it. And I think in a previous interview, I think this was when you're at Higher Up, you shared, and I'll read this quote, you said, if there's anything that's worked to our advantage over the last 5 years, it's been ignorance, and it's never felt daunting. It always feels big, but it never felt overwhelming. And I think that when I listened to that quote, that really felt true for me in terms of just the way I think being a, fish out of water, so to speak, a non-profit founder sitting in front of a VC, co-founder and head of impacts, what you could ask yourself in some ways, what are we doing here? But in other ways, it's that ignorance and naivety and a pattern matching of what's going on that actually helps us to dream bigger than we would have otherwise. So we're so fortunate and grateful for the connection. So so let's just dive. You mentioned the kind of jobs board that we've been working on. Do you want to just dive into some of the details? How does this partnership look for AirTree as part of the 1% pledge with Forever Projects in this season we're working together? You want to just kind of maybe flesh some of that out a little bit? Because where I'd like to go in the end is there's going to be lots of people listening on that might be curious about how they can actually make this work too. So I think some of the detail will really help.
Yeah, great. So yes, for us, Pledge 1% is, in terms of the work that we're doing with Forever Projects, is we have a percent of time and a percent of money. And the money it's a straightforward concept in that it's your kind of donation. And the time is, it's well understood as a concept, volunteer leave in corporate, or just generally volunteering your time. And I structurally felt really passionate about the combination. One of the biggest problems with volunteering for charities is that it takes money to manage volunteers, right? Like, it's expensive, and especially if you're going to do it with a level of intelligence, and that it's well designed and it's unique and it's creative and engaging. And so I think it's really important that kind of you've got both the donation and the time to allow Forever Projects the space to be able to help us build this program, which will ultimately, hopefully, strengthen and benefit Forever Projects through the time that we give. But it kind of helps the program get set up properly. And the time part is I think the really interesting one. That came about, the partnership that we've set up is to allow our team to use their 3 volunteer days in high-skilled, high-value projects, rather than just your kind of classic, I don't know, day picking up rubbish from the beach, which is really important. And if people, there's no obligation to work with Forever Projects. If that's what someone would like to do, they can. But we know through research that these programs aren't always taken up, and that's kind of why they're sort of menial tasks versus people feeling like they'd like to do more. So what I think we've designed together, which is amazing, is this self-serve, really high value opportunity for teams of different skills, of different interests, to contribute to projects that are actually needed for Forever Projects. And so having, that jobs board of these particular topics in these skill sets that people, can contribute to, and that you need, and is aligned to your broader roadmap. And for people to be able to kind of self-select in, arrange their own time, give back a skill, or even take on a project in a skill area that maybe they haven't done before, and it can also kind of double as professional development opportunity. It's just a really meaty, meaningful contribution for our team. Yeah,
definitely. And it was really great to be able to kind of co-design that and go, okay, the conversations you and I have, are you okay? Here's the capability that exists within AirTree. Here are the kind of 5 verticals that they naturally fit in from the different teams. And then I could go away and go, okay, here are all of our gaps, and let's kind of marry those gaps up to those verticals and create little tiles that people can click in on and get a JD and then connect. And I think that there's potential to hopefully gift this to other organizations that might want to kind of create something like this, and we'll just see together in the general kind of ecosystem what can we do to iterate this even better as we go. But it's a great start, and we've already had some great humans from AirTree connecting and adding value, which is phenomenal.
They're loving it. I was just chatting with Jess this morning, and she's like, oh, I get to do this and I get to do that. This is really, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Jess sent an email, I think it was on Monday, about just one of the projects we're working on, and then I had a whole swing of meetings yesterday, and I was just like, okay, here's some input that Jess has had on this project, and that made those conversations all get better. And back to Jess this morning, I'm like, okay, your input together with that input and those conversations, I'm now like, my lens is far wider. I'll look back next week, we'll kind of move forward from there. So it's just that
if we could measure that, hey,
it's that's your job.
It is my job, correct.
I'm happy to help, but
no, it is, and it is also my skill set.
There you go. Well, that's what we need, another tile, Harry, on the jobs board.
Yeah. Measuring the jobs board.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So speaking of which, one of the questions I was keen to ask, and it may not be in like a particular metric yet, but when you think what success looks like within the first 12 months of this, for the season that AirTree and for projects will partner with this, what does it look like for you in terms of AirTree overall, the team members? What are your kind of initial thoughts on that?
First and foremost, it's that we leave Forever Projects stronger than we found it, when you came to us, right? That will happen naturally anyway, because you're a growing organization, and the strength that you and your team behind the projects has got. But, you know, we'd like to make some small, if, you know, hopefully big, but if at the very least small contribution to that. So that's job one, is strengthening Forever projects through the skill set and the time of our team. The second one is to provide that meaningful experience for AirTree employees. I really like something that Craig, one of the founders of AirTree, talks a lot about, which is that he's really where he's growing the next generation of venture capitalists in Australia and New Zealand. And in that, he has a sense of responsibility to grow the next generation of philanthropists in Australia and New Zealand. And I think the best way, you know, we've talked a lot about that, and he's very authentically passionate about it. And there's donating money, and that's a really important part of philanthropy. But if we can, at this stage, while people are younger and at the start of that journey, show them meaningfully interesting ways to give their time and to actually, with their head and their heart and their hands, engage with charities, and it's satisfying for them, it's impactful for the charity, that for me is a really powerful kind of step on that journey for that generational change. And so the second goal for me in this work is to somehow do that in a kind of in the context of this framework. And then the third goal for me in this is, because it's our first year doing it, setting up the foundations for a great future. It's something that we'll do annually from here. You know, we'll have these programs running forever for the life of AirTree. And so wanting to do it right in the first year in the way that we've set up a really interesting structure and scaffolding for it to only kind of grow into future. Yeah,
for sure. As you were talking about that second point around just that next generation of the philanthropists and all that sort of stuff, I think that it's like when you've got a kid and you bring, like, you know, thinking about our kids and teaching them about saving or exercise or nutrition, or, you know, looking someone in the eye when you talk to them. And if you want someone as an adult to be able to do that, then start now, and then it just becomes part of how they are. And it's similar with companies or with founders too. So I love that that's that long view of change, systems change. So if there's other like VCs, tech founders, operators, or nonprofits out there eager to kind of explore this, what advice would you give as they, you know, put their toe in the water and just make some first steps on it?
I think I'd say step one, intend this to be strategic rather than happenstance. So like come at it with an intent to design. Again, I was saying at the start, it's not always synonymous with philanthropy or charity or giving. So like come with that intention, step one. Step two, find a partner that inspires you. You inspire me, you inspire Craig. You're going to continue to inspire the AirTree team as we expand out the program. That's really important. Feel very passionate about the cause and the person or the people. And then step three is just listen to what they need, not what you think they need. You know, be in their hands about what value you can add. Bring ideas to the table, but just listen and be here for what they need rather than what you think they need.
Yeah, and you've done that so well with this. Like I've really been grateful for the way that you know, from the last couple of months as we've designed this, that there's that shared value alignment of like empathy. What's it like, you know, from a project's perspective, what's it like to be AirTree? Where are they going? What do they need? Where could we come and fill gaps? And you're doing the same. And that's, I think, been the beauty of the that framework that we've talked about.
I agree. I also think it sets you up to stumble across the ideas of what the actual program is, right? Like those were three very kind of esoteric pieces of advice, but I think those are the preconditions to come up with a cool thing like the jobs board. So I think if you can come with strategic intent and you have the passion and then you listen, some cool idea will strike you. And that's that's the thing you should go with, not any idea that's, you know, take this idea and implant it if you'd like, but ultimately come up with something that feels like fit for purpose for you and the partners that you'd like to work with.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to just close with a final question around, you know, we've talked about AirTree's vision and you talked about Craig's vision for, you know, what the next generation of founders are doing as they become massively influential in the space. But maybe to just ask that in a different way, like for you, like what's your, we've heard about AirTree's vision, but what about your vision for like what you see could happen here? You spent time in the, you know, impact space at higher up and previously now in a VC. What's your vision for where it can go based on what you've kind of tasted and seen from different experiences?
My vision isn't necessarily a new or unique vision, I don't think, in terms of what other people have, but I think there's like sort of a migration of the traditionally not-for-profit social or environmental end and kind of mainstream business that's migrating closer and closer. And I would just love to see that continue to happen, and it really becomes a little more indistinguishable. I don't think that it makes any sense that the biggest social and environmental issues that we are facing as society are traditionally kind of given those capital limited structures. That really kind of doesn't add up to me. And I'm not alone in that, right? There are far smarter, far more impressive people that work on that intersection of business and social change than me. I'm just kind of following in that, like, yeah, that sounds cool. I want that too. So yeah, I just hope that continues to happen and they get closer and closer, and that we're all pulling in the same direction with our own unique contribution to that problem. You can kind of see change occurring.
Yeah. And I think, and that's a great way to kind of end, I think, because as you think about, if you have that vision and you're thinking about how do we see those coming together, then the companies in your portfolio, the people you're having connections with will, individually and as a company, will certainly move closer towards that. So yeah, thanks so much for what you do, Harriet, and for the partnership. We're super excited.
My pleasure. Likewise.